Okay, gonna go kind of fast here. Again, this is just one copy of the test. On this one, to find that last number, you remember you have to take half of this number, actually is what you fill in right here. So 9 over 2, and then if you square that, 81/4, so that's where they're getting that number from. Number 2, the discriminant, and that's b squared minus 4ac. So this would be 2 squared minus 4 times 8 times 9. So in this case, you get negative 284 when you type that in the calculator. And because this is negative, that means when you went to square root that, you have an I involved. You have to pull an I out and do some simplifying. So that means there's no real solutions. There would be two imaginary solutions, but no real solutions. Solve by graphing. Type that into the calculator very quickly here. So set that equals 0. So 4x squared plus 3x. Bring the 1 over, minus 1. Graph. And I'm just going to do one of these guys, but go second calc. Move this up a little bit. So second calc 0. Again, it looks like that 0 is right around -1. So I'm going to say -2 for a left bound. I'll say 0 for a right bound. That way I just know that my 0 is between those two. For a guess, I'll just get kind of close, hit enter. So -1 is one of them. And that's this one right here. And if you go ahead and do the same thing with the right side, left bound, right bound with that, you'll get the other one. Solve by square rooting. This guy here, and this is a perfect one for square rooting because it has no x term. So I would bring the 33 over first, divide by 3, so I got x equals 11. And now when I square root, I'd get, again, 11 can't simplify, so just be plus minus 11. Completing the square here, I'm going to leave that 2 on the right side because that's not what I want anyway. But what I do want is half of 6 squared, so 9. So I'm going to add 9 to both sides. Now this is going to give me x minus 3 squared equals 11. When I square root, I would have x minus 3 equals plus minus radically 11. When I bring that 3 over, it'd become a positive 3 when I add it over. So that's where the 3 plus radical 11 is coming from. Let's see here, number 6, quadratic formula. Again, 2x squared minus x plus 5 equals 0. So that'd be negative b, so it'd be 1 plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. And this guy up here, it looks like it's going to be 40. 1 minus 40 is negative 39. So it'll be 1 plus or minus square root negative 39 over 4. That negative comes out as an I out front, and that's where they're getting their two answers here. Number 7, solve by factoring. Bring the 9 over, so I got 2x squared plus 3x minus 9. Some of you tried to fake factoring on this guy, but remember these are integers in here, so I get 2x and x. We never had decimals here. And try factors of 9. Now 1 and 9, 3 and 3. I'm going to go with 3 and 3 because we always work our way up. And I am cheating a little bit here. I think it's plus minus just because I can see the answers over here. So if I do outer 2x times 3 is 6x minus 3x. Well, 6x minus 3x is 3x, so that's the 1. Now what makes these equal 0? Switch this sign to negative 3. Switch that sign to positive 3 and then divide by 2. So that's where the 3/2, that's where the 1/2 is coming from. Number 8, a girl stands on the edge of her dorm roof, drops a ball, follows this pattern. The ball will hit the ground after when? Well, it's equal to 0, negative 16t squared plus 64t plus 80. Do quadratic formula, probably be the fastest way of doing it. Whoops. So negative b would be negative 64 plus the square root, and I'll do b squared, so 64 squared minus 4 times a times c. Close all that off, divided by 2 times a, so that'd be negative 32. Hit enter, so negative 1's not it, because can't go back in time. So I'll go back and switch this to a negative. Yep, that was too fast. So this was 64, and I want that to be minus, and that's where the 5's coming from. So negative 1, positive 5. Well, it's a positive 5 one. How tall is the building? 80. That's where the 80 is coming from. Number 9. I've got, I'm adding these guys, so just add like terms. 7 plus negative 4 is 3. This would be 3i. This would be 6i. 3i plus 6i is 9i. That's where the 9i is coming from. These guys here, just remember I squared is negative 1. I'm supposed to memorize that. Now if I have I cubed, that's the same thing as I squared times I, or the same thing as negative 1 times I, which would be negative I. And then I to the 4th is the same thing as I squared times I squared, or negative 1 times negative 1, which would equal 1. Okay. And then the last two here, find the product given the conjugate. Well, and its conjugate. So if this is a plus, I got to put minus. That's the only difference. And when I FOIL those guys, 6 plus 4i times 6 minus 4i, 36. The outer and the inner will cancel out because the way I set it up, so I don't need to multiply those. This would be a minus 16i squared. I squared is a negative 1, so that switches that to plus. That's where the 52 is coming from. And then the last one, solve by substitution, so set those equal to each other. Let's see, plus 8 equals negative x plus 2. Add the x over, subtract the 2, so I got x squared plus 7x plus 6. Factoring, you can do a lot of different methods for solving this, quadratic formula, whatever you feel like doing. I'm going to do factoring, so it'd be plus 6 plus 1. That means x equals negative 6 and x equals negative 1. Now that's not your answer because these are both x values, so that means there's two coordinates where this happens, when x is negative 6 and when x is negative 1. So if I want to find what is y, we'll plug in negative 6 here. So the opposite of negative 6 would be 6 plus 2 is 8. And then plug negative 1 in, the opposite of negative 1 is 1. 1 plus 2 is 3. So that's where you're getting your two coordinates from. So it was kind of fast. I had about 13 minutes left before my prep was over, so I had recorded this about as fast as I could. So you can always pause it and rewind it if that helps. Yeah, hopefully this helped you prepare for Checkpoint B.